What's going on, everybody? This is Julian with Mentality Podcast. This is first episode of season 3. Sorry for the phone if you heard that. And I'm excited. We got another season, right? I'm looking forward to the conversations. I'm looking forward to everything. But today's first episode is going to be just me. So I hope y'all like this face. I'm shaved. I shouldn't have shaved. For the people that watch on YouTube, I should have kept the beard. For those listening, the voice still sounds the same, right? So what we're going to be getting into is a topic that I think a lot of people have been, there's been a lot of questions from, distant friends, distant family members and friends. But today's topic is going to be about my divorce. First of all, this is not going to be a bash session. This is not going to be a I hate her session or she did me wrong session. We're only going to talk about facts, and then we're going to talk about the recovery process and what I had to go through to get myself back to who I am, and also the reflection and the time and the processing that I went through to still pull out things to learn from this situation. All right. So we're going to start it all from day one. And this is going to be more of a bullet point situation. You're not going to get full details. I'm not going to be giving out names. I'm not going to be doing that. For those that know me and they know who my ex-wife was, you'll probably connect the dots in certain ways. But again, this isn't a time to be mean to her or disrespect her or anything like that. I do not have any more communication with her. There's no contact with her. I'm sure somebody will see this and want to share it to her, and that's fine. But I just want it to be known. This is just telling the truth about what happened and my reflection and things that I could get better at, things that I learned, the process, and where we're at now. All right. So before we start, for those watching, you can see my tattoo here. It's a phoenix, right? And 2 Corinthians 5:17. This is actually a cover-up piece, right? So it's very it represents a lot for me, right? So it's kind of crazy because this used to be connected to a lion that I had on my chest that represented my ex-wife. We covered that up with a phoenix, put 2 Corinthians 5:17 under it. It's a Bible verse that I found. It says this: therefore, if anyone is in Christ, he is a new creation. The old has passed away. Behold, the new has come. Verse 18. All this is from God, who through Christ reconciled us to himself and gave us the ministry of reconciliation. That is, in Christ, God was reconciling the world to himself, not counting their trespasses against them, and entrusting us to the message of reconciliation. That's the verse on there. It's kind of ironic too, because I picked the phoenix because they rise from the ashes, and then I turn around and move there. So double entendre, whatever you want to call it. But let's take it back. All right. So about 6 years ago now, I guess, I actually became friends with my ex-wife on Facebook. I thought she was one of the most beautiful women, whatever you want to say, I've ever seen. I was really, really attracted to her just from her pictures, following her a little bit, but never had contact with her or anything like that. During that time, there was some back and forth via comments and stuff. And this is really new age, right? Like, we are millennials for real. Like, if we were to have kids, hey, mom and dad, how'd you meet? I slid her DMs. Like, that's literally what this is. But I remember, shout out to my boy Mike. Me and her had some back and forth, me and my ex-wife, and I'm like, you know what? I need to message this girl, right? Like, I need to message. So me being me, nervous, right? Not really knowing what's going on. I messaged my homeboy, Mike Lee, and wrote out my entire message for him to read before I sent it to her. So he proofread it, said, yo, it sounds good. You don't sound too thirsty. Go ahead and send it. I sent it, and her response was, I've been waiting on you to message me. And that was it. Like, from that point on, we began to date. We got serious pretty fast. We were in Oklahoma during this time. I remember our first date. We met at a Starbucks, and one of the first things she told me was that she had a desire to go to chiropractic school. And me being Julian, like, I love education. If you know me, I've got my undergrad in marketing. I have my master's in education, and I'm about a year away from my PhD in health professions education. But I decided not to continue. Just kind of got tired of it. Might go back. Who knows? But anyway, so when she told me that, keep in mind, this was our first date. And I'm like, go. She's like, well, the only one is in, Missouri. That's the closest one, or Dallas. I'm like, yeah, like, go. Like, obviously, you're kind of feeling this person, but like anybody that's wanting to pursue something to make them better or to develop themselves, I'm never going to tell you not to do that. Right. So I'm like, yo, if that's what you desire to do, go. So we continue to date. Everything's going well. Obviously, in relationships, you have ups and downs, the arguments and things like that. But what I want to focus on right now before we get into, after that is noticing red flags, right? So this is one of the things that I reflected on after the fact when I'm sitting at home by myself and going through this and reflecting and looking back on, okay, what mistakes did you make, Julian? Like, where were you at? Because I feel like a lot of time people develop toxic traits by not wanting to look at themselves in the mirror, right? It's just what this person did to me, how they treated me, they did me wrong. Well, there's certain things that we can look for. There's certain things that we can learn in any lesson. And I strongly believe that. If you are with 3 or 4 people who have toxic traits and treated you bad, why do you keep selecting those 3 to 4 people? There's something in you that's either attracting that person or you're attracted to that person, whether or not you're trying to change them, whether or not you want to, as a woman, you want a little bad boy, as a man, you want to, whatever you want. Sometimes we have to look at ourselves to fully develop and recover from things. And I feel like a lot of people haven't. Well, I'm trying to share my story to kind of give some tidbits on what I did to do that, right? So getting back to what we were, rewinding back to what we were talking about. So, we're dating, and one of the things I noticed off top was we weren't equally yoked. If you're not a Christian, it means it's just like there were some differences in our beliefs. She was relatively new to faith when I met her. So there was a lot of things that I grew up in church, right? Even when I stray away, like I still grew up in church, but there was a lot of things that I was aware of that I've grown up around, a lot of spiritual realm type things, Holy Ghost, speaking in tongues, things like that, that we didn't really see eye to eye on at the beginning. But because I was so, just wrapped up in this girl and how great she was and how beautiful she was, I was willing to overlook that. Well, looking back at that and reflecting, I realized that wasn't a good idea. Like, that wasn't me thinking straight. Not saying that she was a bad person or anything like that, but if you're not equally yoked, that's like finding a person who has every quality that you want, but you might not be attracted to them, right? Like, oh, great conversation, but I'm just not attracted to them. Well, it's kind of the same thing. If you're not equally yoked, you're forcing something that biblically, or if you're a believer, is not going to really mesh. But I thought I could move around that, right? I thought if I was praying, we were going to church together and all those things, it would be okay. Didn't work out that way, right? So that's one of the things looking back where I'm like, okay, you could have been better about that, right? Like, you could have, you knew what was up and you tried to overlook it and do you make your own plans. And Jeremiah 29:11, like, God's plan is the plan. And shout out to Drake, God's plan, right? But my plan wasn't what it was. It wasn't on track with what God had. I didn't know that at the time, but I kind of, well, maybe it is. You never know, but we'll get into that later. So we started dating. 8 months into the relationship, I'm in love with this woman. She's supportive. I'm supporting her. We've started to look at, chiropractic school. She helped me get into my PhD program by finding a program that I can get into. It seems like everything's going well, right? Like, everything's building up. So I proposed in either October or November. It's a shame I can't remember. It ain't been that long, but I went ahead and proposed. And I remember specifically during that proposal, and I've actually reached out to my friends that were there, some of my family members. She did not seem excited. And I know y'all are looking and listening, probably like, what are you talking about? But again, this is something where when you're in the moment, you're not paying attention to all those things like you should, right? In that moment, I'm excited because I feel like I found my rib. This is the person that I'm getting ready to marry, build a life with, have kids with. I see all this in her. But her reaction, like, you normally would see a woman if she's crying or she's really happy, she looked shocked. And now that I look back on it, it's almost panic. But we had already been talking about these things, right? Getting married. We had already talked about this. So for it to happen and to see that reaction and to realize and replay it, I'm like, I wonder what that was about. Don't know, can't tell you, but that was another flag where I'm like, I don't know. Like, that doesn't make sense. So we get engaged and we start the wedding planning. During that time, even before then, there were some issues, and this is another situation to take a look at. But there was some issues as far as family goes, on her side. No disrespect to them, but they were not very fond of my skin color. That's common in Oklahoma, right? Interracial relationships are tough. And when you're trying to blend two families together and, certain sides of the family don't necessarily agree with it, it does make it tough. So there was situations that occurred during that time that were also red flags to me. But you're thinking that, I'm in an interracial relationship. She's not a part of that, even though that's her family. But you still have to think about that's where she grew up and that's where she was raised, right? That's not just my ex-wife. This is anybody on any side of the spectrum. When you're bringing an interracial relationship in, when you're trying to get an interracial marriage, you're definitely blending into cultures. If you want to use the word culture, work, whatever, right? So during a bodybuilding show that I won, my ex-wife let me know that, a stepmom might have sent her a message saying that she wasn't welcome in the family because she was dating niggers. I was the second black guy that she had dated during the time. The family was basically willing to disown her for this. Yeah, and that was it. Should that be like the red flag of red flags? No, right? Like that shouldn't be, but it should question you to think that maybe there might be something deep rooted in this situation and this person that might need to be addressed before we decide to fully blend ourselves together. And I would encourage anybody that's getting into an interracial relationship. I know that's the trend, right? That's the thing to do. Mixed babies, beautiful babies. It's awesome, right? But y'all really have to sit down and get to know each other on a level to where you have an understanding for everything, social justice, race. Like you gotta make sure that you understand each other, where you're coming from, and you're at an agreement and willing to be a force together and a team to go out there. Because one thing you have to realize, most of the time, if it's a black man and a white woman in an interracial relationship, the woman kind of gets placed on her own, right? Like she doesn't really have her family if she chooses to be with them. She doesn't know where to go. She doesn't know where to be. She can possibly try to, seem that she's black or want to be a part of black culture because they're the only one that accept her. Nobody over here in her family will. Like those are things that I think about, right? So you got to pay attention to that. So that's another red flag. So the wedding comes. It's a beautiful wedding. We got married at a church. It was awesome. Family was there. We had Starbucks. That was the theme because that was where our first date was. It was great, right? So we get married, and within less than a year, we're moving to Missouri. She got accepted into chiropractic school. We're excited. We visited. God changed plans at the first place. We were supposed to go to Chesterfield. We didn't go there. We ended up going to a place in Kansas City area where she found. We got a house, and we moved, and she started school. And it was hectic, right? Chiropractic school is no joke. I was there from almost start to end. I seen the rigorous tests, the rigorous studying, like they put them through the ringer. But this was her passion. So another situation now, while we moved there, this is where I began to lose Julian, right? This is where I begin to not stay as focused on God as I should. This is where I begin to not keep Christ the focus of our marriage. And this is where I lost my identity and I became husband, right? I lost my purpose, right? I didn't have one. It was just, I need to be a husband, make sure stuff gets paid. And I'll be blatantly honest. I messed up in that department too. I am not the greatest with money. Look behind me. If you're not looking, I got a bunch of shoes. All right. So those are things that like you look back on and you need to improve, right? Poverty is a thing, right? That mindset and mentality is a thing. So that's something I had to work through and I'm trying to work through, but I'm doing that as I'm becoming the head of household, right? Okay. And I'm paying for everything that I can, rent wise, money wise, like I'm doing all those things. Okay. And I just got wrapped in that. Like even bodybuilding at that point, I had just did a show at nationals. I haven't competed in 2.5, 3 years now since then, due to that, right? Like, and this isn't to blame her. This is my fault for forgetting who I was and just wanting to be a good husband. Because my thought process during this time is she's in school, she's stressed, She's going through it. This is not the time to have a kid, number one. So, and I'm thank God that we didn't. Um, I just want to be there. I want to make sure that I'm doing my part as much as I can so she can focus on school. And when she graduates, we move, she starts her practice, we start a new life. We just got to get through these 3 or 4 years. So obviously, marriage is tough, right? I started noticing my ex-wife had a very traumatic past. Obviously, we're not getting into that. She dealt with a lot of things, incredibly strong woman to deal with some of the things she did. And I'm not talking bad about this woman in any sense, but she dealt with some crazy things. And what I noticed during that time is it was kind of like it was just hard because it always felt like anything I did was not good enough. That caused me, I'm not going to say caused me, but in that, I began to become frustrated, right? I began to become frustrated. I began to get upset. It's like there was nothing that was good enough. I'm upset. Like, I don't know what to do. And it's causing me to distance myself as well. Like, I think we both were distancing ourselves, but for different reasons. It never felt like what I was doing was going to be good enough in these situations. I would often remember times where, she would just say that she felt lonely, or she didn't feel like she was being communicated with, or things like that. And it's like, how? Like, I'm here. And every time I try to talk to you, you just shut down. You don't want to resolve situations. We don't want to do anything. So we did go to counseling. That lasted about 2 or 3 weeks. In a decision that we were going to switch counselors, and we just stopped going. Terrible decision. I encourage another red flag, another reflection piece. I encourage you all in a relationship, getting ready for marriage, go to counseling. My next relationship, my next marriage, whenever that time comes, we're going to go to counseling, and we're going to continue counseling throughout the marriage. There's no such thing as a perfect marriage. You're always supposed to be working to improve your marriage. So you might have a great marriage, but why not go to counseling once a month just to reflect on how everything is going? There might be something that frustrated you or her or him that you didn't talk about. And now you get in front of someone, you can sit down, you can hash it out and move on. So I encourage you, never stop dating your wife, your spouse, your husband, whatever, and don't stop going to counseling. I think counseling is a necessity. I think counseling is something that's needed, and you should go, right? So you go to counseling. All right. So now we move on, and we have issues. But they're marriage issues, right? This isn't a situation of physical abuse. There's no situation of mental abuse. There's no situation of verbal abuse. It's none of that going on. We're just having marital issues as far as agreeing on things, the whole nine. Nothing that I thought was worth a divorce or worth a split up. Never thought that, but we did have marital issues. I think that if we both were to reflect on that, we would realize that, those are issues that happen. No marriage is perfect, right? So I remember specifically the time, I believe I came home in the morning after cardio and I was rushing. I got a phone call I worked for an insurance company at the time. I got a phone call from an insured and my boss, and it was like at 8 o'clock, right on the dot. I'm on my way home. I'm running late to get back home, work from home. So I walk into the door and I'm like rushing to my computer. I run right by her because I'm on the phone with my manager, I believe. And I don't know if that frustrated her or what, but that same day I get a text message that says, "Hey, we need to talk." I'm like, oh, okay. So we get home. I'm sitting there. She wants to talk. And she basically tells me during that time that she wants to get a separation. Now, me, I'm in shock, right? Like, I'm like, huh? I what? Like, I didn't know things were this bad. I'm like, yo, before we take this step, number one, you're getting ready to go to Florida for an internship in like less than a month. Which I found interesting. And school was ending in 3 months. So I'm like, yo, like, let's try counseling. Like, we haven't, like, I am confused here. I'm shocked. Like, I know this is partially my fault, I guess. So, like, but we haven't tried to resolve anything. At that point, she told me she wasn't sure that she wanted to resolve it in counseling. So now I'm like, oh, hold on. Like, no, that doesn't make sense to me. So leave it there. And the agreement at the time was we weren't going to do the separation, but I was going to try to take some time to really work on what she was needing, I guess, which was more attention, more, I don't know. So we're working on that. And I remember during that time, about 2 week time, things would go great. We watch movies, we do whatever. And then she would just randomly say, things like her heart hurts. She's trying, but it's hard. And this whole time I'm confused. Like, I'm like, it doesn't make sense to me. Like, this doesn't make sense to me at all, right? Like, it just doesn't make sense. So I begin to pray. And I remember I talked to my gym owner at the time. Shout out to Bucky out in Belton. And I remember talking, Elite Total Fitness is the gym if you're in the Belton area, Missouri area. Great guy, great Christian guy, just super good energy. But I remember talking to Bucky, and Bucky's had a very extensive past. And he's told me all about it. We've had some great conversations. And Bucky was like, Julian, do you think it's somebody else? And I'm like, nah, of course not. No. Like, and he's like, man, I don't know. He's like, I've been through a lot of situations myself where I've done that to people. He said, I think it might be somebody else there, and you might want to check on that. So, we're looking at that, and I go home. Of course, I text my mom or message her on Facebook, and I tell her kind of what me and Bucky talked about too, and she's like, yeah, possibly. Just pray on it. So then I text my ex-wife, and I say, hey, like, we need to talk. Day later, right? She's like, is everything okay? And I'm like, yeah, we just need to talk. So she comes home, and I just asked her, I said, like, are you seeing somebody else, or are you attracted to somebody else? And she said she wasn't seeing anybody else, but she felt like she was attracted to women. Huh? What? Huh? At this point, I'm like, what? So at that point, the situation's kind of over because, like, I'm in shock, and she's talking about it, and she lets me know this is something that she's been dealing with for pretty much her entire life. Coming from Oklahoma in a Bible Belt situation, I understand some people are not accepting of being gay or homosexuality. It's the Bible Belt, so I get it. And so one of the things she said was, she was just afraid of her family finding out, them not accepting her, people, friends not accepting her, losing all that. And part of me can sympathize with that, right? Part of me can sympathize with that. What the part of me that can't sympathize with that is that you drug me into it, right? We were together for 5 years. And during that time, prior to us being together, you knew that that was something you were struggling with, and you were willing to hide that, which means you were hiding who you were, or dealing with that, right? Even if you weren't, you're dealing with that, but I don't know that. So then like when you're reflecting and I'm piecing things together, it's like, it makes sense why I couldn't make you happy when I was trying. It makes sense why you were feeling lonely. You weren't being yourself. And that's okay, right? Like, now, that's okay. During the time, it's not. And during the time we're going through this, I'm upset. So we have some more conversations, and at this point, I'm still naive. I'm still gullible. So I'm still thinking that it's just her being attracted. So maybe we can work on this. Like, maybe this is something that's not a big deal. Maybe we can, go to counseling and talk about this. Like, I'm not going to just stick you out and throw you away. You're my wife. And so life is just going on, I guess. Like, we know this, and we talk a little bit, and finally, like, again, doing some more praying, I just by discernment, honestly, like, I can't give you guys how I knew this or what, but I was able to pinpoint the specific person that she was attracted to. It was another woman from her school. And I was able to pinpoint that. I'm not going to get into the big parts of the details, but my wife did physically cheat on me with another woman, along with basically fell in love with another woman. And that's where the story gets crazy for me, because my life is completely turned upside down, right? The person that I'm planning on being with for the rest of my life, having my kids, like us having a family, just let me know not only is she gay, but she's cheating on me, gay, bisexual, whatever. She's cheating on me with the woman, and our vows, everything that we talked about, it just means nothing. So that point on, obviously, the divorce is imminent now, right? Like, we get the divorce. I'll never forget during that time, I had to fly back to Missouri for the divorce and show up, and we get the divorce done, and we do everything, right? And I remember sitting in the parking lot and something just telling me to sit there. And when I sit there, I seen her walk out of the building and she got into a car. And as I'm looking, I'm like, she got into the passenger side of that car. And it was parked in the back of the parking lot. And she showed up to my divorce with the woman that she cheated on me with. And they parked in the back. I guess I don't know if they want to be seen or what, but I did see them, and that was my lasting image. And that was the image I needed. Just to, like, you couldn't respect me enough just to show it by yourself, good or bad. Like, you can ask anybody that knew me, knew her, knew us. I love the hell out of that girl, right? Like, I fought for her. Me and my mom, I have seen my mom in 4 years due to this. Like, I really love that girl. And anybody that knows Julian will tell you that. And I did everything I could. And I just realized now everything that I could wasn't enough because she wasn't being her true self. So in a sense, you can be happy for her, the fact that, maybe you're able to do that now. I'm not sure. Again, I don't have contact with her, haven't communicated with her since the divorce. And if so, like, I know that's a lot to carry, right? So the only thing I can hope is that maybe she was able to. If not, she wasn't. I hope, that she has been able to tell people close to her, because obviously I'm talking about this now. It's almost been a year. But yeah, so now that happens, let's talk about God, right? Let's talk about how we recovered. So I'm sitting at home now in Missouri. She has left and went to a friend's place and stayed there. I'm still staying at the house with the dog. Captain missed the heck out of that guy. And it was just, I went through so many levels, right? Like, the first level, I'm mad at God. Like, why in the F did this happen to me? What did I do to you? I know I ain't been the best Christian ever, but I'm not out here doing drugs. I'm not hurting people. I'm not stealing. I'm just working, and this happens to me. How dare you? Why would you do this to me? And I got angry at him. So that was the first thing. Thank God for my mother. Thank God for my friends at the time calling and checking on me, but I was able to get over that. So then it's like, okay, what are you trying to teach me? Like, what is the lesson I need to learn? And the biggest lesson that I learned, that I'm going to tell anybody that's thinking about getting married, that has a biblical foundation, that believes in, that they're Christian, believes in Christ, is, he told me, you placed her above me. And that was really hard for me to hold on to, right? That was a really tough message for me to receive, because it should never be that way. But I did it, and I knew I did it. Even to the point towards the end when, she began to talk about like chakras and third eyes. And like, I was willing to even look into that and research it, knowing that that's not anything that I've ever grown up in or would do. But it was just, I was willing to do whatever to keep my marriage and to keep my wife, against my principles, morals, or whatever. And in that, I made her my God. And we know as Christians that could never be the case. So that was the first mistake. But that's what I learned from that. And that will never happen again. I do realize, looking back at our marriage, that there was things I could work on, that I am trying to work on and get better at. Patience, communication, understanding, listening better. There's a lot of things that you can look back on in a marriage and get better at. So now I'm at the house and I'm binge eating everything. Number one, like, I gained 30 pounds in a month. I started realizing that when it got late at night, I got hungry. Reason being is because she wasn't at home. So there was nobody to, stop me, or there was nobody to entertain me, or us to just hang out or talk, or while she's studying, I know she's there. So at 10 o'clock, I would get hungry. I would go eat, and I would go eat anything, McDonald's, or whatever. Went from 225 to 265 in a month and a half. So we're struggling with that. Thank God the captain, the dog, was there. That was my best friend. Y'all know that too, for the people that know me. And he kept my spirits up as much as he could, being the goofy guy that he is, right? And if y'all see me tear up and hear me like choke up, this is not easy, right? Like, it's not. But I'm a grown man. I can cry on camera because I can fight too. So whoever got something to say it. But you're sitting there and you're reflecting and you're realizing the mistake that you made. You're getting frustrated, you're getting angry, and it's still the damn question of what did I do to God? What are you trying to show me? So I'm talking to my mom and I'm like, Mom, I want to move to Arizona. And that's when it started. Like, this is when God really started showing me that I am a way maker, like 100%, right? So I'm like, Mom, I want to move to Arizona. I had always wanted to move to Arizona. Don't know why, but when I first got my job at Progressive, they flew me out to Phoenix and I fell in love with it from there. My friend at the time, Clayton and Brittany, were living in the area that I live in now in Arizona. So it was a bonus there. I got to see them. I flew back. I immediately told my ex-wife, we got to go check it out. Like, we should move here. We went and visited. She liked it. The plans were to move there. At the end of this, the plan started shifting to Florida. And so that's where we moved. So once the divorce is getting ready to happen, I'm going to Arizona. It just clicked in my mind. So I called my mom and told her that. Now it gets tough. I don't have a lot of money, right? So I need to save. I tell her that I'll be out of the house that she's not living in, but I'll be out of the house around like early June. So what do I do? First thing, I'm collecting paychecks from work, trying to hold on to that. I had stopped paying the mortgage during that time, told her to go ahead and cover the last couple months as I've been paying for it and doing everything. And don't get me wrong, she helped out in her ways too financially. I'm not going to down her like she didn't. At one point, we, lost vents and she was able to use her savings to put a whole brand new vents in our attic because I just couldn't afford it at the time, just being honest. So trying to save up money, don't know what to do. I have to get a job and I have to get a place. And this is where God really started to show himself because I'm looking at places, thinking about a house, renting a house. I can't get down there to look at them. They're wanting deposits, but they're also wanting them for people to move in now, where I'm trying to move in 2 months from then. It just got tough. Um, got denied, not in the sense of denied, but I didn't have a job in Arizona, so some apartment complexes weren't willing. And the one I'm in now, I remember I called and God bless Linda, Linda. And I just said, look, my name is Julian. I'm looking to move to Arizona. I'm currently working in Missouri. I am going through a divorce, and I just need a place to stay. that was my spill. And I remember Linda like literally saying, "Oh my gosh, I came down here 20 years ago before a divorce. Fill out your application, get the deposit fee to me. We'll get you a place." I had been looking for almost 2 to 3 weeks, y'all, and couldn't find anything. And I just kept believing and praying. And within a span of an hour, I had a lease that was signed and I was moving to my apartment June 7th. So that's the first step. Thank you, God, for that, right? Then it's like, okay, got to get a U-Haul. At this time, the only thing I wanted to bring was my clothes, computer, and stuff. And these bad boys behind me, these shoes is coming with me. I don't care what you say. They write it in the divorce papers. We getting these shoes. All right. So I don't have the money. Shout out to my aunt Neat. We knew that we were selling the house. We were going to split that, but that was going to take some time. My aunt Neat, being the greatest aunt in the world, decides to go take out a loan. She took out a loan knowing that I would pay it back from the bank, and I was able to get the money to buy a U-Haul. I was able to fly with my best friend Jerome, who drove the U-Haul while I followed him from Oklahoma, because we started in Missouri, went to Oklahoma because God bless my grandmother. She had furniture. I had nothing, right? She gave me a bed, a couch, all these things. My aunt Nitty took me to Walmart, bought me all my dishes, all my pots and pans, everything, right? It truly showed me that when you need family, they're family, right? And it changed my perspective on family, because for the while I didn't fool with my family like that. But when I needed them the most, they were there. They didn't even ask questions. So me and Jerome, shout out to Jay, best friends since I was 15. We drive out to Arizona, 16, 17-hour drive, stopping, grabbing food, going. We get there, and I move into my place. And the journey's not over. There's still times I got to experience, right? So Christmas, wake up call, right? Like I'm by myself. I'm normally spending Christmas here, so I had to get through that. New Year's, first time I've been without anybody on New Year's since 5 years, right? These are things I'm going through, learning about myself. And everything I was doing was getting me better. Getting into the gym, I'm meeting friends. I done been on a couple dates. I'm fine, so I don't know why y'all would be surprised, right? Been on a couple dates, talked to a couple girls, did all that. Life is getting better. The job that I got back then, huge blessing. Um, Provided me with a company car and a gas card. I was able to take the car that I have and drive it back to Oklahoma and give that to my mom so she could have a car. She's been out one for a couple of years, and she gets her car now. Like, God is good, right? But the one thing was missing was my community. And I was going to a church at the time, and it just wasn't. It was a good church, but it was a bigger church, and I felt like nobody. I feel like I'm pretty noticeable. Like I'm 5'9", 230. You know, kind of swole. I would like to think dreadlocks. Like, I'm pretty noticeable. Never met anybody, never knew anything. And I remember I called my mom, and I'm like, Mom, I think I'm gonna try a different church. And my whole thing was I was dating churches anyway, and I'm like, I just miss community, and I don't know what to do. So randomly I go, a guy from my gym, his name Alex Urias. He was a fitness manager at the gym. I asked him about some churches around here because I know he's a Christian guy, and he referred me to the Gathering. He hadn't been there yet, but he heard great things from a coworker. Shout out Bridget. So I'm going. So Sunday, this is 5 weeks ago, y'all. Like, this is very, very soon. But Sunday, I go and do my cardio, come home, get ready. I'm running late, but I know the church is only 5 minutes away. It starts at 10:45. So I'm like, all right, bet. I'm gonna do that. Pull up to the location and nobody's there. So I'm like, what's going on? Keep in mind, I just mapped it. So I actually go to the website. Turns out that day they had moved to a different location permanently. So at this time, it's 10:55 when I figure this out. And I'm like, I'm going to go home, watch some football, and just relax. I'll do this again next weekend. I don't want to be the guy that walks in late, and it's my first time there. Like, who wants to do that? But something told me to go. I know now that was God, right? So I went. The word was about it was about the message was hooked. And talking about, what's the end on your hook? What's, keeping you away from God? And one of the quotes my pastor said, now my pastor, was, sometimes our basically obstacles are lifelines from God. And I resonated with that so bad. Like, it almost felt like I was being talked to. So, and I also noticed my pastor was fit, right? Like, he got biceps, Come to find out, he hooped back in the day in college, won him a national championship on a D3 level. Pastor cool, right? But yeah, so I'm like, okay, this guy's in shape. Looks like he works out. This is a great message. I think I like it here. Hadn't met a whole bunch of people, but a couple people did walk up to me. So I am out in the lobby filling out my card. And guess who walks up to me? Pastor Don himself. Introduced themselves, like, you're a big guy. We get to talk, and I just told him, like, your word is why I'm here. Like, I could resonate with that so well. And so we began to talk, and I mean, off top, the first thing he did was, and I can't say this, but he wrote his phone number down for me so we could have a lunch meeting just to go over what I had been through. He just wanted to hear my story. He then went on to, like, introduce me to associate pastor Michael. He introduced me to some praise and worship leaders. He introduced me to his wife. I met his son. It's like within hours, I felt like I was a part of a family. I'm like, huh? And I remember leaving and calling my mom and being like, Mom, like, so I met with him for lunch, and I explained to him the story, how I got here, the divorce, the whole nine, all the details. Again, I gave y'all bullet points. I didn't go in depth. And one of the things he told me as we're talking, because he just kept saying, like, man, I think you got a lot of influence. I think you're going to be a part of this. I'm excited to see you grow here. But he looked at me and he said, I'm not going to let you be lazy. Like, you're not going to be lazy here. I've never had a pastor tell me that, but it hit home, because within 3 weeks, I am now one of the youth leaders for our youth groups and youth churches. April 2nd, I will be starting my own small group called Strength with Scripture, which is going to be where I gather up some high school guys, middle school guys. We get into a gym workout. But before then, we're going to go over Devo, talk about word, and really build a community where these guys don't have to feel alone. And I've always felt called to the youth. So I feel like this was I'm going to say nudge because my pastor hit me about that today, one of his messages, but this was my nudge. And although I went through just incredibly tough times, and I'm sure there was more to it, but although I went through the tough times that I did, it made me stronger. And it's amazing that I can say that, but it made me stronger. I'm more confident now than I was. And a lot of you are going to hear this and it's going to be news. Oh my God, she left you for a woman. I would have tried to get both of them in that. First of all, no, that's not how I get down. So y'all can have that. Second of all, I don't care how y'all feel about what happened or why it happened in a sense. I'm telling you the truth, right? Like that's what the facts are. That's what happened. You can make fun, say what you want. Cool. But at the end of the day, I got stronger because of this. I'm more confident because of this, and I'm in my calling because of this. And it was because I decided to not be toxic. It's because I decided to not do things with a malice intent and try to blast her and post this on Facebook. No, I set my behind down and I began to pray and I began to ask God to guide me on how to get through this. And we are here. This is the final step to my recovery and healing. It's just talking about it and sharing my testimony. So here we are. I'm sharing my testimony. Embarrassing for some, whatever, I don't care. This is part of my journey. This is part of my walk. I'm excited to share this story with whoever. I'm excited to continue to grow. I'm excited for what God has in store for me moving forward with this group, with this church, with being a leader, with being able to help the youth, with being able to be real and just say, yo, I've been through some stuff just like you have my whole life. And God has always provided a way for me. So that's what this is, man. And that's what this is about. I hope I didn't ramble too much. I hope you guys got enough information. And we're just going to go back to regularly scheduled programming, be dropping the men's physique review, and doing other interviews and stuff. But I wanted to start off with this. I hope you use this as, encouragement. If you're going through anything, to know life is going to hit you, right? It's the devil's job. When you're a believer, when you're a Christian, it is the devil's job to distract you and attack you and get you off course. That's his job. And he is fantastic at it, whether it's females, drinking, whatever it may be in my life. Because I've done it all. Drugs, everything. He's going to figure out a way to distract you. It's his job. But we have an almighty God who is more powerful than anything that you can imagine that can get you out of any situation. The important thing is you have to trust and believe and just keep walking. That's all I remember telling myself. You just got to keep fighting. You got to keep walking. You got to keep going. And I'm happy I did. And now I'm in a place that I love. I'm with a church and a group of friends. I have friends. I have family. This podcast. I'm getting back on my bodybuilding grind. We're going to turn this into a success story, right? And I wish nothing but the best for my ex-wife. And I hope that she's able to get the clarity and everything that she needs in her life, just like I'm able to do the same in my life, right? There's no ill will. There's no malice. I have forgiven. I'm never going to forget because you don't forget, but I have forgiven. I've moved on. This is my final step to this. And I hope that she's healthy and I hope that she's going to be successful and doing okay, right? We are not going to disrespect her. I don't want any of you to go to her and talk bad or say, I don't need that from you. I don't need that for me. This is all about talking about this, sharing the bullet points, not getting too deep into it, and just hopefully letting people know that we all go through things, right? And life hits us hard, but you can trust God. I'm going to keep saying that. Trust God. God is watching. So I hope y'all enjoyed this, man. I enjoyed talking about it, tearing up a little bit, laughed a little bit. I'm getting ready to go eat another meal. But I love you all. I thank you for your support. For the people who are listening to this just to listen to this story, I hope you tune in for other things, right? But if not, remember these words. Trust God. Stay faithful. Stay prayed up. He will get you through. But sometimes you got to go through to get to. All right? I love y'all. Have a good night, day, morning, whenever you listen to this. And for those watching, you got to see my beautiful face. Yes, I'm shaved, but the smile is big. The hair looking good. For the people listening, just imagine a big Wakandan warrior in all his fineness in front of a mic, and you'll get the picture. All right. Love y'all, man. Have a good one. Bye.